What are things public schools should be teaching but aren't? Teacher says sex ed, and not just about STDs but about personal hygiene, what to expect when you get your period, self-care, etc.
Pascal's Tricycle says, as a former high school math teacher, I would really like to see statistics take over the current place of trig and calculus. Very few people will benefit from a trig and calculus course, but every human being on Earth could benefit greatly from understanding basic statistics. When human beings encounter conflicting opinions, it is science we turn to, or at least should turn to, and statistics is the great arbiter of science.
Sleepy Hollow 101 says, I think they should teach more about relationships. What makes a healthy relationship? What behaviors are unhealthy in relationships? How to identify red flags? What gaslighting is? etc. A lot of people don't have a great frame of reference for what healthy relationships look like and how to create and maintain them. I think it could be really useful to help people develop that life skill when they're young.
Stepsis says how to vote, and that in Australia we do not vote for the Prime Minister.
MCG42 Ray says personal finance, how to manage your money and X200B, edit, AWW, shucks, thanks for the gold.
Nacho Chan says law. It's sad to see how many people don't know their rights when it comes to a lot of things. They used to teach laws in US schools but they stopped implementing it. Nowadays people don't know when the system or someone else is stepping on them. I had my co-worker recently say it was mandatory to join their HOA. It's illegal to force someone to join an HOA. My husband often looks up laws out of boredom and learned a lot about what people over you can and can't do.
Alex NDRDVN says psychology, even if you miss something else. Basic knowledge of how people function gives you an enormous asset in figuring out how to get information and how to work with other people. We're a group animal. We're going to communicate with each other.
Barack 181 says basic life skills, creating a personal budget, paying bills, applying for and maintaining credit, etc.
MC Mamas says, since my top choice was already posted, personal finance, I will go with my very close second, PLAI at the elementary level very least. We expect kindergartners to read chapter books by the end of the year, but in the process, they have forgotten how to share, problem solve, imagine, and collaborate an X200B. Then we sit and wring our hands when they get to 4th grade because these kids are always acting up on the playground and don't know how to play. And surprise, they also don't know how to read either.
Barry Custout says simply how to behave professionally. Does that make sense? How to dress business casual, telephone etiquette, email etiquette, basic etiquette. Any and all things you would need to know to go to an interview and get a good job, and then do well in that position. It goes way beyond your typical customer service jobs, any office job or position working with other people. You're gonna make it way further if you just know how to carry yourself and put off a vibe of professional confidence.
John McFly says leases, loans, taxes, dealing with fraudulent charges on your bank statement, credit card pitfalls, home budgeting, etc. Also needs to include interacting with local governments, how to handle a parking or speeding ticket, what it's like to go to court, your basic rights as a defendant, how jury duty works and why it is important, how to handle a property appraisal or zoning variance, etc. All the standard consumer math is relegated to classes for slow kids while the advanced kids are taking AP calculus so they can be preyed upon by free t-shirt if you sign up for our credit card promotions at college football games. Government classes just teach theory about the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Not many practical applications for students in the real world when they are trying to figure out how to pay the water bill and the local government only accepts cash or certified funds for past due accounts.
Electrical Iron says how to find your passions in life so you aren't so lost when you graduate.
Kairat says cooking. The high schools in my area stopping teaching homemaking about 5 to 8 years ago.
I am your Huckleberry says critical and logical thinking skills.
He and Lowland says first aid and CPR. Cognac and Kindle says lots of things. But if I had to pick only one, sex ed. Like real sex ed. This is how your body works. This is what happens when you get an erection. Let's talk about the menstrual cycle. Here is what a healthy sexual relationship looks like. This is how pregnancy actually happens. This is how to properly use birth control. Here are resources you can utilize in the community if need be, etc. Not this abstinence BS, and not scaring kids into thinking that pulling down your pants within a 100-foot radius of the opposite sex will lead to pregnancy or contracting an STD. I feel that everyone has a right to understand how their body works in all its functions and how to pursue resources if chosen to do so. That means debunking myths, removing stigma of talking about it, and providing clear information in a setting where all questions and concerns are acceptable to discuss, whether that be in a classroom setting or privately after class with a trusted, knowledgeable adult. Drasiranub says foreign languages to elementary school students. The benefits are innumerable, and elementary schoolers can learn much quicker than anyone in high school, where we usually start teaching them.
I am dating deanery, says Baby Logic, or what gets covered in a Phil 1250. I've been told that research shows that students can understand propositional logic at age 12, which is what Phil 1250 covers, along with categorical logic and informal reasoning. We have students from at least grade 6 writing persuasion papers, but without understanding the mechanics behind argumentation. We can teach kids this without having to go into first-order symbolic logic, and if middle school is too early, then by the time students are capable of learning Algebra 2, 10th or 11th grade, this should certainly be taught. This would be more valuable than a 4th year of English literature, if we had to make a trade-off, and Baby Logic could be integrated into a wider ethics or political philosophy class, but it could also be the ground of a non-fiction writing class, and more useful than the 9th grade grammar that is often taught, which basically everyone forgets, since grammatical knowledge is primarily intuitive, not declarative anyway.
Spudita69 says mental health.
Dinaclaire 101 says how to properly act in a job interview. One of my friends was perfectly qualified for a job, but they didn't hire her because she didn't make enough eye contact.
Population reduction, says ethics.
Ridley says taxes.
No clue. Dad says for every suggestion, what would you take out in order to make room for the new content? We can't just keep adding things for teachers to teach without removing something. So what would you like to give up? I'm not saying everything taught now is useful, but there has to be a trade-off. Hicks91 says I genuinely think that they should have a certain grade in high school in which, let's say the juniors, instead of going to homeroom for a half period before or after lunch, work the service areas of the cafeteria. This would give them experience working a job in which they have individual responsibilities in a team, and be humbling in the sense that they would experience how the faculty staff of their high school are treated. It would be a lesson in empathy as much as a lesson in work ethic.
Kasahito says civics. J.M. Crown says I love any time there's a thread where everyone says, how come they don't teach personal finance in school? I'm an educator. Believe me, kids see things like taxes, investing, loans, etc. as completely foreign. They are not going to engage with stuff like this until they need it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard former students come back and say, I wish someone would have told me. I always shake my head and laugh, because what they don't realize is they probably were told. They just didn't pay attention at the time.
Godspeed says how to mind your fucking business. Something in Red 29 says economics. Every time I signed up for it as an elective in high school, too few signed up and the school didn't want a class with only 10 people in it. I would have rather had the class in high school with only 10 classmates so I could have better understood it when I took econ classes in college.
Cowsbeacon says self-defense.
Beth Jesus says foreign language should be a requirement much earlier in a kid's schooling. I know many public high schools require at least 2 foreign language credits. I don't know if this is statewide or nationwide or a district-by-district thing, but public schools in general should have kids learning foreign languages around the ages of 7 and 8. Ability to learn a new language decreases after the age of 10, and ability to become fluent regresses even more beyond that. Beginning foreign language education early would also allow schools to reinforce that knowledge throughout elementary, middle, and high school, rather than learning a bit in high school and likely not picking it up again in any significant way.
Redicia says a class of common sense and things that no one talks about but is expected, like the bus seat rule. I will actually throw fists if someone sits in the seat with me when there are plenty of other empty seats.
Bagunit says honesty, morality, conflict resolution, how to interact with other human beings in a harmonious manner, critical thinking, empathy, meditation so you can properly manage thoughts and feelings. I think this is taught at home. You are wrong. Most people are left to figure this stuff out on their own. Many never do, and our society suffers as a result.
Major says how to interpret news and facts, and discern what an opinion or skewed facts look like. It's ridiculous how many people are swayed by so little.
Sleepy Egg Dog says I'm a para-educator in a public middle school and I've always wondered why they don't have a first aid section in health.
Dreamer 915 says question everything and think critically.
Mysterio 446 says networking.
Murderadrum 11 says sex education, gun safety.
The Bill Brasky says it. Personal finance class CC had one in high school, 12 years ago. Let me copy paste my exact comment from the last time this subject came up. I don't know where this bullshit, the narrative that personal finance classes aren't a thing, came from. I was absolutely taught how to do my taxes in high school. I was absolutely taught how to handle basic finances in high school. It's a requirement for graduation in my state and many others to take a personal finance class. And I got my K-12 education all in the same building, in a dairy farming city whose population is 40% below the poverty line now, because it's abroad. Basic class meant for literally every student. It might not have the detail necessary for a complex financial reality, but it covers the basics. Make a budget, read and understand a pay stub, understand net versus gross income, calculate interest and consider interest rate above all else when borrowing money, write a check, do your own 1040 EZ, contribute to a 401k, or other retirement plan as early as possible, don't spend recklessly. Kids are expensive, you don't need to have a credit card to build credit, and save money.
Calgrab says I'm curious about how many of these topics are things that people just didn't care about in school versus those that are actually not taught. My shitty public high school taught 80% of these topics pretty well and a lot of them were mandatory in NYS. We had a lot of pregnancies in my graduating year and a big problem with drugs. Some of the people who got pregnant or got caught with drugs blamed the school for not teaching them. We had 3 years of sex ed and it was a solid curriculum. The same goes for taxes and finances. I've had discussions with friends who see memes about not being taught these things and start complaining about how shitty our education was. We were in the same damn home and careers class that taught us how to sew, cook, and balance a checkbook. So I wonder if it's more about young people not caring about school or putting the effort in rather than these things not being taught.
Till nothing Emma says it. Shit ton of people who love buying shit they can't afford and blaming high school for not teaching them finance. Newsflash, you can't afford your 200 phone, but it's the school for not telling you.
Wintergamer18 says self-defense social skills including how to deal with wanting to commit suicide. I wanted to kill myself because of school, also what and how to pay taxes, and how to buy a house and start a business.